Hello, greetings to everyone, and welcome to this great webinar delivering a sustainable food system with zero food waste as we recognize the International Day of Awareness of Food Loss and Food Waste, as well as also as we go through the Circular Economy Week, which is hosted by Revolutionize London, in a way to raise awareness about the importance of circular economy, of which the food system is a very key aspect. As we recognize the International Day of Food Loss and Food Waste, it's very important for us to reflect on what are the causes of food loss and food waste. How can we help people understand more about these challenges, and in what ways can we go about addressing these challenges? I'm so pleased that we have an amazing line of speakers with us who are going to shed light on what their organizations are doing to lead the change in addressing food loss and food waste across the world. This amazing set of speakers will also throw more light on what actions we can take away from today to enable us to start working towards reducing food loss and food waste. And hopefully, we can actually achieve a food system where there is zero food loss and food waste. So, for me, delivering this particular keynote speech is really trying to make it clear to us, or make it provide more understanding for us on the impact of food loss and food waste, what on our society, on our environment, on our economy, and also try to highlight the importance and the need for us to address these challenges. Food loss and food waste has enormous impact on people having access to good food. I'm sure a lot of the statistics will also strengthen some of these conversations we're going to have today around the number of people who are currently suffering from hunger across the world. How do we help more people have access to good food and avoid wasting the food? Also, we have issues around the economy, which connects with the food system, because as human beings, we eat food on a daily basis. If we eat food, that means it does have an impact on our economy. How can we help to ensure that by reducing food loss and food waste, more people can have access to good food, and then more people can engage with economic activities, which then help to improve access to good food for more people? Also, in terms of the environment, we all know that, or we've come across the information that 8 to 10% of greenhouse gas emission is related to food loss and food waste, and also the way we grow and distribute and consume food today. Now, the other thing we don't usually talk about is that 30% of the soil is being degraded, not because we need to produce food, but because we produce so much that we don't actually eat. So what if we can improve on the way we grow food, distribute food, and consume food? It simply means that we can begin to improve the soil health. And this will also end up improving the quality of food we produce, and which will ultimately make a wider impact on the health and well-being of people. So my ask for us today is to really take time to listen to our amazing speakers who are going to give us more insights to the solutions they are developing, whether in terms of policy or in terms of research or in terms of ongoing activities to end food loss and food waste. And that we will be able to take away some key actions at the end of this particular section. So I really encourage us to take the time to take notes, and be able to understand where we can make the next step in addressing food loss and food waste. Whether we are a farmer or we are a policymaker working with the public sector or the government, or whether we are food retailers or hotels and restaurants, or even as households, we all do have a role to play. And this is why I keep talking about the importance of planning. Planning has got a key role to play in enabling us evolve a food system where there is zero food loss and food waste. What does it mean to plan? It means the households can start thinking about what they eat, how they go about purchasing what they eat, and how they store, manage the food that they buy. So planning is very important, because when households start to plan, then other food related sectors will begin to plan too. And when everyone is planning and we are all working together, it simply means that we can both put heads together and address different challenges we have across the food system, of which food loss and food waste has got a significant impact. So really encourage everyone to start thinking about, in your role in the organization where you engage with the food sector, how can planning help you, and how can the outcome of your planning tie up with other activities of other players within the food system, so we can work in unison, we can work together to address the problem of food loss and food waste. Thank you very much for joining us today. And I hope you have a great time being part of this webinar today. And that the time you spend on this webinar will really deliver a huge impact for our society, for your organization, and for the well-being of the wider society. Thank you very much. And we will try to go through a session of reflecting on what exactly we want to achieve from the session today. Thank you. As part of the ongoing reflection, I will encourage us to please bring our phones, and you can take a picture of the QR code. We just try to run through this reflection time to think about what we are trying to achieve, or what we want to get out of this webinar today. So please scan the QR code, and we can go through that process, and then be able to share the outcome of that reflection process. So I will just give us time to be able to access the session, to be able to use the QR code or use the link which is in the chart, whichever way you're joining us, whether Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. You should have the link or you can use the QR code to engage with this particular session. We just want to have a reflection on what we want to get out of this particular session before our speakers start speaking, because that will also help them in engaging with us, making sure that we're getting the best value from the session. So thank you for engaging with us, and I will soon go ahead to share with us the outcome of this particular engagement. I think it's great to see a lot of contests here. People thinking about how they can reduce food waste, how they can be encouraged. It's good to know more about what that is really pointing to. People also want clarity. They want insights. People want to be inspired. I really love that. I think that's really what we want to achieve today, to make sure that people are inspired and to be able to engage and see ways we can reduce food loss and food waste. There are interests in ensuring that they can get some insights, they can get more information, they want to see examples, they want to get some direction. They also want to network, build their network and engage with other people who are like-minded, who want to really do great things. So I think this really is really good to see what people are thinking about joining the session, and this is something that we'll hopefully be able to share further as part of the report from this session, to provide some insight on what people are thinking during the session, and hopefully we will continue to engage with you via the Mentimeter as we progress, to see whether some of these points you've raised, we are able to address it, and if not, where the gaps are and what we can do to close that gaps going forward. So thank you for engaging with this. I believe it's really been quite useful to our speakers to see what your expectations from this session is, and how they will do their best doing the presentations to make sure that they meet that expectations. And yeah, I'll leave this to run for the next 1 minute, and then we will move on to the presentation that we have for today. But thank you for joining us today. Hello, everyone. Thank you. As we move into the next session, I'm going to be bringing to the stage our first speaker, Dr. Jean Bosby. Dr. Jean, I'm going to bring it to the stage at the moment. So, and I'm going to do a quick intro for Dr. John Borsby. Dr. John Borsby is the USDA Food Loss and Waste liaison in the U.S. Department of Agriculture, a position created by Congress in the 2018 Farm Bill. Prior to this position, Dr. Bosby worked for USDA's Economic Research Service, most recently as the chief of the Diet, Safety, and Health Economics branch, before moving into management. Her primary areas of research as an agricultural economics at the Economic Research Service were food safety, food consumption, and food loss and waste. She's domestically and internationally known for her research on the amount and value of food loss at the retail and consumer levels in the United States. I'm so pleased that you're able to join us today, Sean Borsby, and I will allow you to carry on with your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the kind introduction, and it's my pleasure to be here to help celebrate the International Day of Awareness of Food Loss and Waste. And I will be sharing with you what the U.S. Department of Agriculture is doing to reduce food loss and waste. As we heard in the keynote, there is a large amount of global food loss and waste, and it really adds up, with 1/3 of all food produced going uneaten. And we heard also about the linkages between food waste and greenhouse gas emissions. Also, about 1/4 of all fresh water used by agriculture for crop production each year is associated with food loss and waste. And there are just so many connections between food loss and waste, food security, the environment, economics, and so many other things like sustainability, that it's really a unique topic and really big problem, and all of us have a role to play. And this is all the time when we have such hunger worldwide. There are both international and domestic goals to reduce food loss and waste. Importantly, the Sustainable Development Goal Target 12.3 calls for cutting in half per capita global food waste, or cutting in half all food waste, and making real inroads in reducing food loss. Let me step back a little bit and share with you that in principle, or in general, food loss is food that is produced for human consumption but goes uneaten sometime between the farm and up to the retail loading dock, in short. And then food waste occurs when food that is produced for human consumption and goes uneaten for any reason at the retail level, in retail stores, that is, in food service outlets like restaurants, fast food outlets, and other venues, and in consumers' homes. In 2015, the United States set a national goal to cut food loss and waste in half. I just wanted to give a quick overview of my position as the USDA Food Loss and Waste Liaison. Basically, I work with stakeholders from farm to table, work and really leverage internal U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, resources, and work with partners in many of the USDA agencies and offices, work with external stakeholders, and we also work across different federal agencies, for example. Oops. In particular, we have a formal agreement for a federal interagency collaboration to reduce food loss and waste, which is between the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, as well as the U.S. Agency for International Development. Now, these 4 federal agencies both have their own activities to reduce food loss and waste, as well as we have joint activities. For example, one thing that we have done with EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Food and Drug Administration was to put together a national strategy for reducing food loss and waste and recycling organics. This was released in June 2024, not too long ago, by the White, it is a White House actual national strategy. So, and it has 4 main objectives: preventing food loss and preventing food waste, increasing the recycling rate for all organic waste, including food scraps, and then really to support policies that incentivize and encourage food loss and waste prevention and organics recycling. Public-private partnerships are going to be key. There is no single solution to really address and really make inroads into this enormous challenge of a third of all food being produced going uneaten. But as I mentioned, public-private partnerships are just one kind of area of strategies. With the Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has a pledge called the U.S. Food Loss and Waste 2030 Champions, where businesses publicly commit to reducing food loss and waste in their own U.S. operations in half by 2030. And many of these corporations are international as well. You can check out on our website. If you search for USDA food loss and waste, you will find it. There's a whole page on the 2030 champions, as well as our milestone report, which is in the lower right corner, which shows the activities that some of these businesses are taking and the impact of their activities to reduce food loss and waste. We also have signed our memorandum of understanding between the Department of Agriculture, Environmental Protection Agency, and Food and Drug Administration with the Food Waste Reduction Alliance, which is essentially composed of the 3 associations in the United States representing food manufacturers, food retailers, and food service. We also are in the process of renewing our partnership with ReFed, which is a national nonprofit aimed at reducing food loss and waste. In the biggest picture, the biggest sense, I'd like to think of what the U.S. Department of Agriculture does in 4 main buckets of activities. And I'll go through these one by one, starting with program funding. And we had an unprecedented one-time funding of $55 million using American Rescue Plan Act funds. And the next 2 slides will cover some of that information or those new programs that have been increased with this one-time funding. 30 million of that went to increase the composting and food waste reduction pilot program over 3 years. Essentially, this was a competitive program where in the US only, where projects proposals and the awards went to projects that develop and test strategies for planning and implementing compost infrastructure and food waste reduction initiatives. And the awards were throughout the United States, including Alaska and Hawaii. We also invested $25 million to support work, a wide range of work at other parts of the food supply chain. In particular, our community food projects competitive grants program developed linkages between food producers, providers, and emergency food recovery organizations. And this also, the money in that pot also, I will share it in the next slide, went to some real regional initiatives as well, which was a separate competitive program, and that's the Sustainable Agriculture and Research Program. And then our Food and Agriculture Service Learning Program, or FASLIP, provided grants to school districts and other eligible entities to reduce food loss and waste on school grounds, really to educate the children and youth and provide them with ideas and strategies on how to reduce it. So there are a lot of things are out and working now. And here is just a big picture of that SARE, Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education grants that I mentioned. These were these competitive awards were given in 4 regions of the country, and there was great interest and great demand. A wide range of projects that are now ongoing, very exciting, ranging from one that is rearing insects for their protein, feeding them on food scraps, others that are really developing food hubs in their community, and others that really get food to those in need. Another program that's been longstanding, again, also funded in the U.S. Farm Bill by Congress, was the Emergency Food Assistance Program Farm to Food Banks Project. And this goes through states, and where states actually have programs within their states that are the states that are participating that reduce food waste at the agriculture, production, processing, or distribution level, and really focusing on the donation of excess wholesome food to get to so that it gets to those in need. We have many other programs, such as those that fund anaerobic digesters. There's many excess food management pathways to make valuable compost, for example, to create energy, to create new and valuable products. And we fund and participate in a range of activities. Here is another program that deals with on-farm food waste projects. LAMP is a local agriculture market program, is really an umbrella of different programs, but many of them touch on food loss and waste reduction as well. As a second bucket of what the U.S. Department of Agriculture does, we do research and research funding. We have two primary research institutes. We have the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, which is our main extramural outside of USDA funding agency, that is. And that really is to advance agriculture-related sciences and includes food loss and waste-related research. And we also have our Agriculture Research Service, which is where we have our own bench scientists in-house and labs across the country. And both ARS and NIFA have produced and are producing neat innovations like new cultivars of produce that have longer shelf life, or new equipment that is used to harvest apples, for example, with less bruising damage, and others. So it's very exciting. We also have an economic research service, which does in-house economic research and also works with academics on food loss and waste issues, such as what are the drivers of on-farm produce loss. The third bucket is outreach. We do a wide range of outreach, including our own roundtable webinars. We have a YouTube channel with many of our videos and these webinars. We do produce some of our outreach materials in Spanish and in some small cases, other languages. We have a Food Keeper app, which is available for free on your computer or on your phone, and it provides guidance on safe handling, preparation, and storage of more than 650 food and beverage items. Check it out; it's free. And then we also, as the fourth bucket of what the U.S. Department does, we do regulatory guidance. Our USDA Food Safety Inspection Service provides guidance on food product date labeling, for example. And studies have shown that consumer confusion about food date labels has led to food being discarded prematurely. And they also provide guidance on the donation of eligible meat and poultry products. Some of the key takeaways of what we've heard today so far, and also more in general, is both in the US and globally, we have a really long way to go to reduce food loss and waste in half by 2030. And this is an enormous challenge. As I mentioned, it's something that everyone has a role to play. At a minimum, we're all consumers, and many of us are in the food industry with opportunities to take action. USDA is helping prevent, reduce, and repurpose food loss and waste through many activities that I mentioned. But there's many different solutions and some of these will include education and to increase awareness of food loss and waste and the solutions to address it, as well as another important strategy are these public-private partnerships. And I just really want to emphasize that everyone has a role to play. I'd be happy to share my slides after the webinar. I have included a range of links with what the U.S. Department of Agriculture is doing, and includes the national strategy I mentioned, our press releases that are recent, and other activities. And feel free to reach out to me when you wish, and I'm happy to help out how I can. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, John, for that amazing presentation. I think there's quite a lot of key takeaways from there. Whether you are a researcher, there are opportunities for you to engage with the USDA. Whether you are actually on the ground as a producer or any other stakeholder across the food system, there's an opportunity for you to engage and be able to leverage support. I think it's amazing that mostly you have a lot of support here that can help you tackle the challenge of food loss and food waste. But more important, I think regulation is very important with the SDG 12.3 and all the forces being pulled together to ensure that many countries will be able to meet that SDG 12.3. I think there's quite a lot we can do. And I really like what Jean said about the importance of knowing that we all have got a role to play, irrespective of where we are and what role we play across the food system. So thank you, Jean, for that fantastic presentation. Really enjoyed that. And I think with that, we'll go to the next speaker. Next speaker is Rosa from the FAO. Why I'm trying to get Rosa on stage, I really want us to take a moment of silence for people across the world who are going through a very difficult time in war and crisis at this point. This is also referring to one of our speakers, Sarah Asma, who is supposed to join us, who is currently based in Lebanon from the UNEP, United Nations Environment Program. She is no longer able to join us because of the crisis and the challenges they're facing at this moment. So I really want us to take a minute of silence for people across the world who are going through very difficult moments. Okay, thank you very much for that moment of silence for people going through difficult moments across the world, and also for one of our presenters who can no longer join us from Lebanon today. But I think as we carry on, because what we're doing is quite strategic and quite important to addressing global issues, which is food loss and food waste, please do stay on, and I will introduce Rosa from UNFAO. Rosa is the Senior Enterprise Development Officer at UNFAO on food laws and food waste. Rosa has actually had a lot of publications around this topic, showing her grounded knowledge within this area. Topics around consumer level food waste prevention and reduction towards sustainable diets, managing quality and reducing post harvest losses in mango value chain, purchasing patterns and consumer level waste of fruits and vegetables in urban and peri-urban centers in the Philippines, and just the other one, a regional strategy for sustainable agricultural mechanization strategy. All these are publications that Rosa did contribute to, but also so many others which I cannot name all of them now. But yeah, and Rosa also done a lot of work around establishing the International Day of Food Loss and Food Waste. So I am so pleased that she's able to join us today and share some insight with us on the work of UNFAO. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. What I'd like to do in the context of my presentation is to, first of all, start off by just giving a very short introduction in terms of what FAO is, a little bit about the background to what FAO does. And basically, FAO is a United Nations agency that leads international efforts to defeat hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition. And FAO's vision is a world free from hunger and malnutrition, where food and agriculture contribute to improving the living standards of everyone, and particularly the poorest, in an economically, social, and environmentally sustainable manner. So now getting into the core of my presentation, just to get us on the same wavelength, because there's so many different ways of characterizing the what we generally would refer to loss or waste. I just go through the definitions that were established by FAO in 2019, so that there's a common understanding of what is being referred to. So in terms of that, food loss is defined as a decrease in the quantity or quality of food resulting from the decisions and actions by suppliers in the supply chain. And so it goes from harvest up to, but not including retail. And food waste, on the other hand, goes from retail to address the issues in terms of retail and consumption, whether in households or in food services. FAO is the custodian of the food loss indicator, and UN Environment is the custodian of the food waste index indicator. And if you look at the boundaries in the supply chain in terms of food losses, you would note that it addresses from harvest up to, again, not including the retail, but it includes also processing. And later on in my presentation, I will provide an example of what we have been doing with micro, small, and medium enterprises in Asia to address food losses, in reduction of food losses and food waste in their enterprises. So where is FAO at today in terms of the measurement of the food loss index? What we know today is that more than 13% of the food produced did not reach retail level in 2021. And what we know also is that you have the highest levels of food losses in where you have highly perishable but very highly nutritious, nutrient-dense foods, like in the case of fruits and vegetables, as well as meat and meat products. And at the same time, this is happening. We have so many more malnourished individuals in the world, and so much more needs to be done, as was highlighted in the last speaker's intervention, to address the fact that we cannot continue like this. And we have to really look at taking actions to begin to make the difference in terms of maximizing the food that is produced and ensuring that it gets fed to people. It winds up in stomachs and not in landfills. And looking at on the right-hand side of the chart, you see that according to the different SDG regions, again, you have the highest levels of losses taking place in sub-Saharan Africa, the green arrow at the bottom, and in the Europe and also North America, where you have the lowest levels comparably across the different SDG regions at approximately 9.9%. Now, reducing food loss and waste is critical to ensuring food security, also to lowering greenhouse gas emissions. As we heard earlier on, 8 to 10% of global food loss and waste account for 8 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. It also contributes to increasing the efficiency of our land and water use and to creating financial efficiencies across the food systems. Now, I'd like to share with you an example, a very concrete example of what FAO does in terms of the work that we do with countries on the ground, to give you some perspective of the differences that that need to be looked at when we're looking at food loss and waste, because there's what we always say, there's no silver bullet, and no one size fits all. So basically, what we are working with is trying to work with countries to better understand what is happening in their specific context. And this takes quite a lot of work. It takes a lot of investment. Here we are looking at the case of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in Thailand and what happens in the context of food loss and waste sustained. Now, what is interesting is that 99%, micro, small, and medium enterprises account for 99% of the activity in processing in the food sector. And so making a difference with those micro enterprises can actually positively benefit not only the producers, but also consumers. And in the context of the stakeholder base that we are looking at, also help to get more food in stomachs of the low-income people in rural and urban centers. So looking at, we conducted a survey. A survey was conducted across 66 of 77 provinces across Thailand, and in the micro, small and medium enterprises in 5 sectors. And what we found that a majority of the respondents were not aware at all of the occurrence of food losses in the processing operations. But when they became aware, they were also very interested in doing something about it. So all SMEs in the survey reflected that the reduction of avoidable food waste in their enterprises would be achieved through improving quality control, process control, packaging, handling, and storage. And so I'm going to give you a specific example, which is a very successful one that we worked with in the context of the surveys that were done, which is, in this case, a micro enterprise that is basically run by women. Again, the gender aspect is very important in the context of the processing of processing activities of micro, small, and medium enterprises. So basically what we did, we went into the operations and looked at what was happening, how things were going. The steps involved in the process include germination of the rice overnight, steaming, using wood, firewood, clean burning stoves, drying in a low energy, again, solar dryer using renewable energy, and then dehulling and polishing of the rice grains, sorting, as you can see down at the bottom of the screen, using most of the times is manual labor because you have a large number of individuals who actually benefit from improvements in their livelihoods by working in these SMEs. So a lot of them get together. It's part of their culture and also just the normal lives that how they interact. And then packaging and marketing of their products. So next, please. Okay. So what we found was that in that SME, which had some 17 stakeholders, what we found is that there were a number of, we identified a number of hotspots that were taking place within the processing operations of the SME. And the major, what we did was, this was done, through the use of the FAO food loss analysis methodology, where we actually looked into the number of what was happening at different stages of the processing operations. So essentially what we found that the areas highlighted in red were where the critical loss points occurred, mainly during the steaming, the soaking and germination processes, as well as in distribution of the products of the micro enterprises. And we've also found that there was waste taking place in retail. Now, what we also looked at was what they were doing as well in terms of the processing, what was happening to the byproducts of the processing operations. And it's quite interesting to see that very little went to landfill. Everything that was done in terms of the processing activities of the SME was actually utilized in some way through a circular system where it went into being composted or it was fed to animals, whereas in the waste, it was not possible to actually use that product. And so that was what went to landfill, which was still significant, but very small. And what we found was that one of the other significant things that we saw was that across the entire system, though they were not identifiable as a critical loss point, there was a lot of spillage. So we had to also address that issue, which didn't come up as a red flag, but in looking at what was happening all across the entire system, we realized that it was something that we had to address with the introduction of good practice. So overall, we found some 28% losses during processing, 10% losses in distribution, and about 3.7% in retail. And then characterizing what was happening there, we found that there was both qualitative and quantitative losses taking place. The qualitative was largely due to poor process control, the lack of temperature and moisture control in their operations. And then the other thing was the packaging of the products. They were packaging in good quality packaging, but not properly sealing those products. And then in the context of what was happening at the quantitative level, which I just mentioned, that of spillage, and that was due to improper handling, and again, due to poor packaging. And so this was the basis on which we identified some of very simple solutions, because they already had the infrastructure in place, but it was just a question now of helping them to move to that next step where they could really improve on the quality and reduce the losses that they were facing. And so simple things like temperature control, we introduced very, items, simple thermometers, also give them the equipment, equip them to be able to monitor the grain quality and to see when it was up dried between 12 to 14%, because that's the moisture content at which they would actually be able to maintain the quality during milling. And then also we help them in terms of the improvement in terms of the sealing of their packaged products. And what happened at the end of the day was quite interesting, because not only did they we helped them to reduce both the qualitative loss and the quantitative loss, but what eventually happened as a result was that they were able to move up in terms of the market opportunities that they could access due to the fact that the quality, the overall quality of their products now were able to meet the national standards in Thailand for their products, their rice products. Overall, we were able to achieve with the simple training that was provided to them and the simple items of equipment a 40% reduction in food loss and waste in the SMEs that we were working with. And what this meant was that it generated for them significant economic benefit. And yet when we're talking about smallholders in a rural area, the difference it made was quite significant in that what you see is that if you look at the first blue arrow on the left, you see there was that 40% in reduction in losses. What this meant, it was the equivalent of 252 kilograms of rice per month. And that was valued at some 25,000 baht, or 250,000, I'm not quite sure, but the equivalent of 74 US dollars. And that is a significant saving for this category of stakeholders in a rural context as well. So to conclude, what we have been able to achieve by using just very simple things is to help those people to improve their livelihoods by reducing food loss and waste, to improve the quality and the consistency of their products, and then also to contribute to their food security, not only in the rural areas where they live, because many of these SMEs, they actually produce for the urban poor as well. And in the process, because of the way in which they process their products, and we found this was very, very significant in many of the categories of products that they produce. We found that what they were doing is actually very low energy, requires very limited amounts of energy. And so in the process, what they're doing is also mitigating greenhouse gas emissions in terms of the way that they're processing. Now, given the fact that there are thousands of these types of SMEs, if they are equipped to do much more in that direction, they can generate collective action, collective effort that can make a difference in terms of the emissions that come out of these SMEs. So I think in conclusion, there's a lot that can be done. What we are showing here is a lot that can be done in terms of helping just to move people from one step to another. And that can, if done collectively and scaled up, can make significant difference. So I'd just like to also acknowledge that this project was funded by the government of Japan through its Ministry of Agriculture and Foreign Affairs. It was designed and developed by FAO and implemented in collaboration with the Royal Thai government. So in conclusion, let me just say thank you for your attention. And I also would like to draw your attention to the links at the bottom. We invite you to look at the technical platform on measurement and reduction of food loss and waste, where you can see a lot more of what FAO is doing in the context of food loss and waste reduction, and also to join our community of practice on food loss and waste. We have a monthly publication that also comes out on provides highlights of what is happening not only in FAO, but also in different countries, different parts of the world, different ongoing developments to address the issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rosa, for that insight in the work of UNFAO. And I think the small and micro enterprises form the bedrock of economic activities across different societies, and really supporting them and helping them to understand the areas where food loss and waste occur and how they can work towards mitigating that, I think is really going to deliver a lot of impact, and also is going to strengthen those businesses, which will then have a wider impact on the site. And I really appreciate the work you're doing, Rosa. I think the next speaker, but thank you so much, Rosa, for joining us. Just to say that the next speaker who is supposed to join us is not available at the moment, like I mentioned before, because of the issue in Lebanon. We will take a quick break, and hopefully we will continue with the other speakers that we have today. Thank you. And I really encourage us to please stay on, because we're going to have the opportunity for you to get more insight to the presentations by the speakers. So please do put your questions, your comments in the charts, whether you're joining us from LinkedIn or from YouTube or from Facebook. We are expecting your questions, you're expecting your comments, if any, in the charts, which we will be able to relay the questions to the presenters after all the presentations. So please don't go away. We take a quick break. Grab your tea, your coffee, your drink. Stay with us, and we will be back soon. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. It's been a great session, and I think it's been a lot of knowledge being shared by our presenters today. Thanks to Jean, Rosa, providing insight on the work they're doing. Amazing opportunities to get and leverage support from USDA for your work you're doing in the US if you're based there, and also thanks, Rosa, for sharing insight on the project that FAO did with SMEs in different countries. And I think that is really definitely going to deliver a lot of impact because SMEs form the bedrock of any economic activity. Now, moving on, we're going to invite our next speaker, who is Luisa. Hello, Luisa, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today. So I will do a quick intro for Lisa. Lisa works with SURUG, which is Scotland Rural College. Lisa is in applied economics based at SURUG and specializes in agri-environmental economics. Her main research interests are behavioral economics applied to food waste and recycling, land and water use, climate change, consumption of higher welfare, and healthy food products. Uptake of animal diseases control technologies, economic, excuse me, economic modeling of the linkages between trade, animal health and welfare, and environment, and analysis of environmental efficiency of knowledge and innovation transfer. So there's quite a lot of work that Lisa is doing that touches on food loss and food waste. And I'm so pleased that Lisa has made the time to join us today and share some insight on this work. Thank you very much, Lisa, and I'll let you carry on with your presentation.
Thank you very much for the introduction and, of course, for inviting me to talk at your event. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm hoping that this presentation will complement the ones from FAO and USDA while still having quite a bit of policy focus. It's looking at things from a more research angle. I'm going to be talking about how we look at food waste and circular economy from a system thinking approach. That's probably because it is difficult to not look at anything that they're interconnected with. As we all know, the research on food waste and in policy interest and industry interest on food waste and circular economy is not new. However, for quite a while, things were happening a little bit, not very well related. So pockets of research, pockets of knowledge. And lately, we all recognize that systemic approach would help all of us progress with research, with policymakers, with finding ways to progress further on reducing and preventing food waste and incentivizing circularity. I would say that some of the prerequisites to delivering a circular economy would be looking at data and measurement in a harmonized way. Doing that also for policies and legislation is not only the policies that focus directly on food waste or circular economies that matter, and also others like health and trade and many others would have at least an indirect impact. So there is a need to harmonize how things are done, not only in the food waste and circular economy departments, let's say. And how you do that, of course, not anymore independently, ideally through collaboration. And we're talking about academia, industry, and policy all together. Looking at this slide, trying to give to put together the factors influencing what we do with food waste. What are the effects, and what would be the incentive mechanisms to, potentially leading to behavioral change. if you look in the middle, you'll see something resembling the food waste triangle from prevention all the way to disposal. And on the left, you have the factors influencing waste creation. What happens when you look at the impacts of food waste on environment, economy, and society. And something I discovered, at least on my screen, lower at the bottom of the slide, you have the incentive mechanism where you are looking at policies, the private incentives as well, such as banking, green banking industry, NGOs. I'm guessing the next slides will be deconstructing this high-level diagram, and we start with factors influencing waste creation. I'm not quite familiar with this with StreamYard. I need to apologize in advance for the next few slides, which are going to be very busy because I created this in PowerPoint, and that would allow introducing them gradually. However, based on quite a number of reviews or workshop with stakeholders from very different backgrounds, industry, academia, policy, we ended up with quite a few, but still very aggregated factors that may influence waste creation. And here we're talking mostly about data access and knowledge, then markets. Competition is important. Safety and diet and health, again from a societal perspective. We're talking again from behavior, so it's not just individuals that are part of this or affected by food waste and circular economies. Firms in particular would be doing something with that, so across the chain. Then availability of infrastructure and logistics and access to those. We are not talking national, we are talking transboundary issues here, so international market and competition that is also influencing through trade. And something that is probably less easy to control, but could be through the work to prevent climate change, weather, and of course, you can't ignore the costs on both sides, business and society. If we were to look at circular mapping, you would be looking at either to do that from a sector-based or place-based perspective. So if we are to try to identify where waste happens and where you could do something about it, prevent or reduce. If you look at it from a sector perspectives and think supply chain and think of waste, whether in tonnage or translated into greenhouse gases, would happen from primary production all the way through transport, wholesale, retail, all the way to household. If you're looking at superimposing this and the waste hierarchies, the triangle, then waste prevention will be embedded through interventions along the chain. This would apply to any supply chains, but of course, for the topic of this seminar, we focus on agri-food. Again, remember, in PowerPoint, this would be slightly less busy. I mean, not from the beginning anyway. Focus on the right-hand side of this slide and think from prevention, reuse, recycling, different high value or low value, recovery and disposal. So the waste triangle with different bits happening to the left. So we're talking what? Reuse. What do you have here? Byproducts, consumption, reuse as animal feed, redistributive surplus through NGOs. As we all know, there are ways to redistribute the surplus and reduce the amount of potential waste that would go to recycling, recovery, or worst disposal. Then recycling is mostly is divided mostly in two categories. We are looking at high value and the secondary markets dealing with that, or recycling low value. So something still, we may still be able to recover something before the recovery stage. Yes, we do recycling along the chain. Remember the food, previous slide on the food supply chain. Ideally, as we all know, we focus on prevention, but if that's not possible, then redistribution by products, recovering as much as possible, and least disposal. In disposal, you'll be looking at things that are non-biodegradable, sending to landfill. And we can also talk about exports of waste. And there is quite a bit of legislation trying to prevent that happening. In terms of effects, there are not only environmental effects, although the main the main factor identified by research originally was environment. So what are the environmental effects of waste, and water circularity be preventing that mostly from the environmental angle? And here we are looking at, obviously, through waste tonnage, all the way translated into greenhouse gas and contribution of waste to emissions and climate change. But it's not just that. It's obviously not just emissions. It's waste contaminating groundwater or affecting wildlife health. Sorry. And of course, we are talking also about resource loss in terms of energy and raw materials that were used to produce the food that ended up not being used, not consumed by households, or at least redistributed, or at least reused for other life, for livestock, for instance. We're not only talking about those, we are talking also about economic effects. So costs is the main issue here, which would include not only the cost on environment, but cost on human health. Then preventing that through investing in infrastructure, which has a cost in itself. So pretty much everything that is translated into cost, all the way to impacts on the job market. And here we'll be talking about the green jobs, green skills, green jobs, something that all relate now with circular economy. And this is not environmental and economic effects are not the only ones here. Society is affected. Whether it's we're looking at that through the perceptions, through behaviors, or through directly the impact on household income or household welfare or household health. Apologies for the very busy slide here. But the idea would be to, if you look at the right-hand side, you would follow from top to bottom, not a specific order, just the way this is designed. We're talking about the potentially incentive mechanisms to reduce, to prevent food waste, and to incentivize circular economies. There is a combination of factors and of incentive mechanisms here. We look at government, whether that is local, regional, or central government, whether those are mechanisms that are directly linked to food waste and circular economies, or other related policies. Think here energy policies, trade policies, climate policies. If you look also as a private incentive mechanism, you identify industry involved in this, or green banking, so finance is quite a few mechanisms lately linked to green financing of several initiatives to reduce and prevent waste. Then other incentive mechanisms can be non-governmental organizations, and there are different interventions depending on the type of mechanism. So if we're talking about policy, then you can look into investment, regulation. So anything that is around the carrot and stick type of measures to do something, in this case, reduce waste, promote circular economies. Similarly, industry incentives could also be about incentives, can also be about links specifically to markets through labeling or through contracts to incentivize greening of the chain through contracts with their buyers or suppliers. And of course, you have the green finance instruments that also help. Many of the redistribution schemes, while not only promoted by NGOs, are NGO-based related. So if you are trying if you're thinking about putting all together the factors, the hierarchy of waste, the type of effects, and the type of incentive mechanisms, then you may end up with it will help to look at them as interconnected elements. So you'll have be able to create a foundation to put a basis for systemic approaches. So when you are able to, when you have the data, when you have harmonized data in particular, you are able to analyze something like this in different contexts. So you do need the system perspective to be able to analyze whether you are still interested in one of the issues. You can't ignore the relationship with pretty much everything else. So as a researcher, and I'm guessing also USDA and FAO colleagues would agree, you can't change something unless you consider the direct and indirect impacts on pretty much everything else. Otherwise, you change something, make something better, and that may have side effects, sometimes not so good, that without systems approach, you may probably ignore. And this is just an example of what you can do when you focus on some of the interventions, some of the interventions, and how that would affect things along the chain, and implicitly may change also the environmental, economic, societal effects, depending on what a researcher or policymaker would be looking at. Something that comes from another of our projects, another research project. We had a meeting with a workshop with stakeholders, and we're trying to look into what would be, which would be the mechanism to incentivize better creation, better availability, better access to data. So in order to be able to, let's say, run an economic model, or on the previous slide here, so transform these, feed data into those loops, and identify, get some numbers that may help policymakers or industry, and obviously also researchers learn a little bit more about something. In order to do that, you need the data. So there are quite a number of factors that the stakeholders participating at this other workshop identify. So if we were to aggregate for simplicity reasons, you'll be looking at legislation, sharing culture and environment, skills and awareness, and of course, cost. So those stakeholders, after a few hours of discussion, identified quite a number of interventions, again, aggregated, but we're looking at targeting, prioritizing, and monitoring data collection, mechanisms for ensuring consistency of data reporting. Remember that there are plenty, I mean, there are many people involved and many people dealing with data. They can be the data creators, the data users, or both. And many, I mean, each of them may be using a different software, different economic, different model, different way to report the data. So unless you are looking for some consistency in this data reporting and any stages related to that, then it's quite difficult to actually have reliable data to use in economic modeling. Other incentive mechanisms would be looking at facilitating awareness of existing data. There are pockets of data that many people don't know exist. That is also because some of this data is public, some other data sets are not yet public, and without that awareness, you may either reinvent the wheel, recollect data that is already there. So obviously not very efficient and costly. Then quite a number of aspects related to that. Then skills and capacity building, you need people to know how to create and how to use the data. So you need to be always investing in a younger generation of researchers, in this case, to learn how to use that data. There are also mechanisms for institutional harmonization of data needs. Research many times is in answer to policy needs. So without a clear idea of what each of the policy departments will need, and some harmonization, again, you may recreate the wheel, you may be looking at things separately, you may be trying to do something with data available in relation to some policies and ignoring the relationship with data for other type of policies. Again, that can create problems and give an incomplete picture. There are also behavior mechanisms promoting data sharing culture. So as you all know, GDPR is important, and data needs to be anonymized for obvious reasons, and not all data should be shared. However, there are data sets that could easily be shared and are not. So I'm guessing for those data sets that could be shared safely, some way to promote behavioral change would be needed. The data sharing culture is certainly an issue here as well. And of course, the stakeholders participating at the workshop, and we had academics, statisticians, data and creators and users, policy, some industry. I tried to identify, to rank to find a match between solutions, interventions, and the factors influencing availability of data. This is just us playing with those findings, but what you see there is pretty much what the table before showed. But in any case, so imagine that you have data to fill in some of those loops or detangle some of those loops and see if you can estimate, and then this can be used to get some quantitative more than just qualitative insights, both equally important. The research, my presentation focused on research from some of our projects funded by the Scottish Government and Zero Waste Scotland. And we are very grateful to the stakeholders participating in the workshop that constituted the basis for the latter part of the presentation. Thank you very much. I can't hear you.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for that fantastic presentation. Looking at the food system level and considering various factors that could be impacting food loss and food waste, and different stakeholders and how those interface and also drive food loss and food waste, and also looking at the impact on society, economy, and environment. I think that's really very insightful, and I'm sure our audience and anyone who comes across this presentation will be able to take away quite a lot from that presentation. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to say that the question and answer session will take place after all the presentations, and because we needed to go on a break at this point, and we already had a break before, what I think we can do is just to weigh people's thoughts. So we want to know what the audience are thinking around some of the topics we've covered. So we will go into some reflection time too before we will be able to bring the next speaker to come and speak with us, who is Lisa. And she will join us around 15:05. But before then, we will run through some reflection points. And when Lisa joins us, she will make a presentation, and we go into the question and answer. Thanks, Lisa, for the fantastic insight you shared with us. So just give us a minute, what we'll pull together the reflection questions, which will go through that. Your input will be highly welcomed, and we encourage you to engage with it because it just gives us a time to reflect on some of the discussions that we're having already today. Thank you. So once again, please do bring out your phones and go with us to the Mentimeter. You can access it via this QR code, or you can also access it using the link we put in the chat before, which I'm just going to drop in the chat again if you've not got that before. So please do engage with the next set of questions which you'll be sharing via Mentimeter. And if you also can use a link, you can actually go to Mentimeter and use this unique number, which is related to this particular webinar, to be able to join us and share your thoughts. So 380. You can also join us using that link. So wherever you join us from Facebook, from LinkedIn, from YouTube, you should be able to access the QR code which is on your screen, or the link, or you can also use the unique identifier number which you can join us with. And I think the next question we'll be looking at is to just have a reflection on the discussion and tell us, what do you think are the major causes of food waste? So I'll give us some time to think about it. We really want this to reflect what is applicable within the region where you're joining us from. So please think about, within your region, what are the key causes of food waste, and we would love to see what your thoughts are on that, and we'll be sharing it shortly. Thank you very much. I think we've got some interesting responses there, and I'll encourage you to keep thinking about these issues that causes food waste, because the more we understand what are the causes, the better we are able to address food waste. So please do keep sharing your thoughts. And I think food waste does impact across different stakeholders across the food system. So I would really encourage us to keep providing input. We really want to understand what it is like where you are, what are the causes of food waste, because the more understanding we have, the more we can pull together resources to and also engage more with different stakeholders to make sure we can address challenges around food waste. So please keep sharing your thoughts, and we will keep highlighting that and be able to take that forward, take this information and continue to engage with different stakeholders. So I think a lot of points are coming in here. Knowledge gap, probably the information means just lack of information, poor planning, people getting the portions wrong, especially for when people go out to eat, what portions do they take, especially when they have a buffet. I think that's what probably the participant is talking about in terms of portions, getting portions wrong. I think policies got a lot of role to play when it comes to making decisions. But I think what is standing out is really information is important, because it seems everything does revolve around information and people getting the right information to do what they need to do. Harsh weather conditions, that's quite an interesting one, because I will link harsh weather conditions mostly to food loss, but it may also have an implication for food waste, knowledge gap, poor planning, not planning, which is something as poor planning. So it's good to see planning coming here. And please do keep sharing your thoughts. Gluttony, is it gluttony? So people wanting to take a lot, which has to do with portion control, to portions wrong. So I mean, the more we're able to reflect on these challenges and why we're having the food waste issue, the better we are able to work together to address that challenge. So I do hope that we will have more thoughts coming through. So if you're having any challenge using any of the options that we've shared to share your thoughts, please do drop message in the chat and we will try to get back to you. I can see some comments here. If you can put it in, you can use the Mentimeter to share your thought, that would be great. Just means that we can collect that information better, and we will also be able to share that as a follow-up report to all the attendees or anyone who has signed up to the webinar. So please do use the Mentimeter if you can. If you have any challenges using the Mentimeter, please drop a comment in the chat and we will do our best to resolve the issue. But thank you for your contribution on this particular question. And I'll give us a little bit more time, just a minute, to kind of wrap up this question and move to the next reflection question. So this just remind us that this is just a moment of reflection, looking at some of the things that we've been discussing just to see where we are. And then after that, we will invite our next speaker, who is Lisa Johnson. Lisa has joined us, so she'll be speaking very soon with us. So thank you. Well, just in case you are just joining us, we are having a reflection time. So if you may have joined us now, I just want to share the link to the Mentimeter for you to be able to engage with this reflection section. We've had a bit of a shuffle in the agenda because one of our key speakers from UNEP based in Lebanon couldn't join us. So we had a break earlier, which means that at this point, we will be going through this reflection question rather than having a break. And then our next speaker will be joining us after this reflection question. So I hope you do understand with us at this point. So if you've not had access to the Mentimeter, please, this is the QR code if you want to use your phone to take a shot, or you can use a link in the chart, or you can use the unique code, which is the number 4148380 to be able to access the Mentimeter and join us in this reflection time. Thank you very much. And I think we'll be moving on to the next question shortly. Well, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts around the major causes of food loss. We can see key point coming out here is poor planning. Storage is also a key factor. You can see storage coming up in different ways. Ignorance, climate change. Yeah, climate change could also be impacting on food loss because food impacts on climate change and climate change impacts on the food system too. Lack of necessary infrastructure, technology to be able to do it right. Also, policy is an important factor. Siloed players. So I think that's also a very interesting contribution there when people work in silos and don't really explore partnerships and support to be able to drive change. Improper planning, so that also connects with planning and misinformation, so very important factors shared there. So I would encourage us to keep thinking about these causes of food loss and keep making input here, because that will really help us. The more we think about these issues, the better we are able to address it. And I mean, I'm quite pleased we have very key policymakers who are with us today, who will also be looking at this information and be able to work with it going forward. And we will also be pulling all this together into a report for everyone who has participated in the webinar and who has signed up for the webinar. So we will encourage you to keep thinking about this and keep putting on the information here. Just to say that don't forget to put in your questions in the chat for the speakers, because we'll be having a question and answer session with them after the presentations. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for your contributions. I will encourage us to continue to make the input while we go on with the presentation today. So with that, I will be inviting the next speaker, Lisa Johnson. So, hello, Lisa. Hi.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here with us. Thank you so much for joining. So I will make a quick intro for Lisa, and Lisa will take it on. Lisa is a leader in on-farm food loss research, serving as an independent consultant. She has provided collaborators with technical assistance, and protocols for reducing food loss on farms in accordance with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 12.3. Her protocols have been incorporated into the Stewardship Index for specialty crops, crop track farm management software, and now a global farm loss tool. She is a strategic and research partner to World Life Fund, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Society of St. Andrew, Boston Area Gleaners, Uproot Colorado, REFED, World Resource Institute, and the Consortium for Innovation in Post-Harvest Loss and Food Waste Reduction. She leads the National SARE Food Loss and Waste Grant Program. Dr. Johnson has authored book chapters in economics of food loss in the produce industry, Routledge Handbook of Food Waste, and Preventing Food Loss and Waste to Achieve Food Security and Sustainability. She has been invited to speak to dozens of unique audiences. We're quite pleased that you're here with us today, including the Consumer Goods Forum, the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, and the Committee of the European Commission, and has been quoted in major media outlets such as Forbes and Huffington Post. Her focus remains fixed on finding solutions that incentivize, benefit, or at the very least, do not harm food producers. Dr. Johnson engages students several times a year as a guest lecturer, and she is based in Lally, NC. Thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us today. I will let you carry on your presentation because I'm sure there is so much packed in there for us. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the invitation to speak on this very important day of awareness of food loss and waste. I have focused much of my career on food loss. And so that's what I want to talk about today. Now, you have to understand that I am based in the US. And so most of my work has taken on developed country agriculture. And I'm a horticulturist, so I think about fruit and vegetable crops pretty much all the time. I don't really think too much about meat or dairy or grain crops at all. I'm going to share my slides so that you can see what I'm talking about. So preventing and reducing food loss and waste, it should say in fruit and vegetable crops in developed country agriculture. So I see that we have a really nice international audience today. I hope that there's something here that you can take away. I remember when I was in school being, a horticulture student, we learned so much about post-harvest loss. And the way it was presented is that it was something that happened to people in other countries, because here in the US, we've made so many advances in transportation, in refrigeration, and packaging, and we have. And there are so many amazing people that are working to translate those learnings to developing countries so that we can help people preserve and store and transport food, extending the marketing window for them. What I've found over time in the US is that we have our own set of problems when it comes to post-harvest loss. We don't have a lot of losses in storage and transportation and due to packaging, which is what you might see in developing countries. But we have our own problems. So let's talk about it just a little bit. Over time, I have served as a researcher, a senior research scholar, an adjunct assistant professor, an independent consultant, and now I am a national grant program manager for SARE. So over that time, I've developed a huge network, and I have to say that if you want to get started in working in food loss and waste, your network is going to be your biggest strength. I'm just one person, but I can do anything with the right partners. So I would encourage you, if you're looking to work in food loss and waste or incorporate it into what you do, to find amazing partners. So the reason I get up in the morning every day is because of this, right? Here's a field of bell pepper. I put this measurement in kilos per hectare because of our international focus. But you can see here, there were about a truckload of bell peppers that were left unharvested because the price dropped. So this is one of the things we deal with here in the US. It's a similar situation in watermelon. 28,000 kilograms of edible product in a 2.5 hectare field because the market evaporated. Or here's leaf lettuce, 10,000 kilograms in a less than 3 hectare field because these lettuce heads weren't 9 inches tall. And maybe we're all more familiar with this, over 30% of the crop lost because of extensive rain. So what I want to share with you is that maybe we could talk about the definitions real quick. Food loss has a lot of definitions, and I don't want to repeat what any of the other awesome speakers have talked about. But the way I see it, it's the unintended result of processes or limitations in storage, infrastructure, packaging, marketing, and production. So food loss happens when it leaves the human food supply chain. Over time, the definition of food loss has really evolved, I feel, from the early definitions of post-harvest loss that we had back in the 90s. But what I think is really interesting is that it has evolved to include the crop that is mature and ready for harvest, but doesn't get harvested. So it doesn't just include losses that happen after the harvest. It includes losses that happen at harvest, which I think is interesting. So what I want to make sure we all understand really clearly is that fresh fruit and vegetable growers are already doing everything they can to prevent losses in production. It's difficult to know if you don't work in farming, but growers actually spend all year preventing the losses they can prevent, whether it's by choosing high yielding and high marketable cultivars, by preventing errors in seeding and planting and maintenance. Growers here have custom fertility packages, really optimized irrigation systems, and strict pest and disease management programs. As you move up this graphic, what you start to see is that there are a lot of losses growers cannot prevent. Excuse me. So if we have a total loss of crop or field, it's weather related, it's labor related, it's food safety related. There's nothing growers can do to prevent that loss. So this is where the rest of us really need to step in and support our growers in getting the rest of the crops out of the field. In fresh produce production, there's a lot of crops left out in the field unharvested. What does that quality look like? Well, part of it is actually marketable quality. It's quote unquote perfect for buyers to put in the retail setting. So it's the right shape and size, the right maturity, undamaged, perfect, right? Then there's also a lot left that we would consider to be edible quality. In other words, it's too small, too large, not the right shape, might be miscolored in some way, but it's otherwise fresh, healthy, safe, undamaged, not rotten, and ready to eat. Then there's a portion that we would consider unfit, which is maybe diseased or damaged, rotting, things like that. In every field that I've been in, you could separate the quality into these three categories. In the US, we have a really difficult issue in that the amount of food we're leaving behind on farms is really astronomical. So I started my research in North Carolina, where I found on average, we leave about 5,000 kilograms per hectare unharvested of fresh, healthy, edible produce that could be used, right? Perfect for use. There was another study that came on after mine in California that found they were leaving about 11,000 kilograms per hectare out on the field. Now, there's a lot of reasons for this, and I want you to take these numbers in context. That typically the grower has not made some error in that they have, not irrigated or something like that. Typically, it's because of a reason the growers can't control. When we look at national statistics, what we find is that there's an estimated 15.4 million tons of fresh produce that gets left on farms. And if you can see, most of that is not harvested. About 2% of that gets donated. Now, in the US, and I don't want to repeat what any other speakers have talked about, but in the US, we also have food insecurity. About 10 or 12% of folks in the US have trouble accessing or affording the things that they need to stay healthy and strong. So it would come to mind that we could use all of this fresh produce to support people who are in need. It's a great idea. It's just not that simple, right? It's not that straightforward. Excuse me. When a crop is ready for harvest, there's a lot of things that have to sort of come together and line up for that grower to get the crop out of the field. They have to first have a buyer that's interested in their crop. Now, a lot of fresh produce growers grow on contract, and a lot of them do not. So they have to have a connection into the marketplace, somebody that wants their product. Then that buyer has to offer a price that covers the harvest cost. If we think about it, the harvest cost is the most expensive portion of bringing the crop in. They have to have excellent quality in the field, or that produce is going to get rejected, right? Then on a farm, there are lots of different priorities. So if there are two crops ready for harvest, and one is kind of winding down, finishing up, and one is coming on strong with high quality and a high price, where would that grower send their crew? What would you do? You would do the same thing. You would send them to the field with the high yield, the high quality, and the high price. So if all of these things come together nicely, then a grower can make the decision to get that field harvested and send that crop to market. However, if only one of these pieces falls out, it's not really economically feasible to harvest the crop anymore. So crops get left behind. This kind of covers most of the reasons why crops get left in the field. We have to remember that many of our fruit and vegetable crops are hand harvested, which has a whole slew of problems with it, not the least of which it exploits people. But if you look at it from a grower's point of view, this type of harvest is extremely expensive, and costs for labor go up every single year, whereas prices for fruit and vegetable crops don't go up every single year. If they did, people wouldn't be able to afford them at all. So we have some hurdles in just simply getting the crop out of the field, even if it's wanted. Again, here's another picture of sweet potatoes in North Carolina, where I live, being harvested by hand. It's a very challenging issue, but certainly leads to losses in the field due to quality. So why do we have so many issues in fruit and vegetable production? We have prices too low to cover the cost of harvest, unpredictable marketplaces, in some cases overproduction. Growers are penalized for giving a low volume or sending the crop not on time. We don't really have a limit on rejections. We have a serious lack of donation. Most of our relationships are transactional. And in general, this leads to a high risk and low margin business. Just as an aside, we have thousands of pack sizes, which also lead to rejection. Sorry about that. I'm just getting over something. All of these factors sort of make solutions to on-farm losses really, really hard. So what we need to see going forward is relationships that extend beyond just that transaction. Unfortunately, we need the rest of the supply chain to care about growers and their sustainability, right? Their economic sustainability, I should say. We really need to measure how much food loss is happening in all parts of the supply chain in order to target the approach or customize the solution, you could say. We really need to shift an imbalance of power that we have. Growers are, in our capitalist system, are in competition with each other. And that can lead to a lack of cooperatives, a lack of contracts, which means that buyers could have a lot more power in those transactions than they do. Here in the US, we have a couple problems with fruit and vegetable demand as well. We, as Americans, eat 1 in 10 servings that we're supposed to eat. You could also look at our food insecurity issues as a lack of demand. We have an intense need, which you could translate to demand if all of those people were able to be served, if they had access to fresh produce. And then again, growers don't have a lot of price support or support for fair trade practices. So when we think about solutions for on-farm losses, unfortunately, it's challenging. It requires supporting farms and farmers and including their perspective when we start to make tweaks to our food system. Now, since food loss and food waste happens throughout the supply chain, and in particular, fruit and vegetables have the highest rates of losses throughout the supply chain, I've kind of broadened my focus in the last year or so to include food waste a little bit more. I've become the National SARE Food Loss and Waste Grant Program Manager. So we have just started this program this year. It's been really exciting, and aim to give away $8 million in US-based projects. If you haven't heard about SARE, it is a grant-making and education program authorized by the Farm Bill in the US and supported with funding from the United States Department of Agriculture, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, so federal funded. The purpose is to advance agricultural innovation that promotes profitability, stewardship of the land, air, and water, and quality of life for farmers, ranchers, and their communities. Most of the grant programs include research and education grants, and professional development grants, and producer grants. Our program divides the country into 4 regions on the knowledge that different regions have different issues related to agriculture and need different education and different solutions. The projects that we have been looking for with this program are prioritizing the first 3 most preferred food recovery methods on the EPA wasted food scale, which are to prevent food from becoming waste or loss in the first place. So by reducing the volume of surplus food generated, or producing, buying, or serving only what's needed. By donating or upcycling, donating extra food to anyone that can use it, or diverting previous waste streams to produce new products. or feeding animals, diverting food surplus or scraps to animal food. I'm sure you've all seen the EPA's wasted food scale by now. We are targeting these first 3 sections with this program. So what I can tell you about this program is that we've finalized the award decisions, and we have not made announcements yet on who's receiving the funding and what projects are going to be supported. So I can't tell you right now. What I can tell you is to look out for exciting new announcements in this area. We did have really good coverage of the program in the US. We had proposals from 39 states, 2 territories, and DC, with a total amount requested of almost $70 million. What this tells me is that there are so many amazing projects on food loss and waste going on in the US that need support. So we're really happy to be a small part of that. I talked over lots of the things that I have done in the last 10 years of focusing 100% on food loss and waste. What I want you to take away is that if you have awareness and information about food loss and waste, you too can find a place to jump in, pick out what really moves you in this issue, and reach out, create a network to do something about it. If you can divert something going to the landfill by making a few phone calls, wow, what an impact, right? So I would encourage everyone to get involved as much as you can, learn about food loss and waste as much as you can, and finally do something about it. We're all capable of doing something. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you, Lisa, for that insight. And I'm sure there are a lot of points to take away. And I am definitely looking out for updates around the projects and what the projects are delivering across the USA. So it's been great to hear your insight into the work you've done, and I'm sure that the audience found it very useful. I think what we'll do, just to give you some time to recover from this extensive presentation, is to take a 5-minute break, and all the presenters will come back again on the screen. We'll take a few questions from the audience, and then we'll wrap it up. So thank you very much. So I will encourage us to please put our questions in the chat. Whether you join us from Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube, please do put your question in the chat, and we'll back shortly to answer your questions, and also for you to be able to get more insight from our presenters today. So thank you for staying on with us. And let's go on a short break.
Did you know 1 in 5 deaths every year is linked to malnutrition? Agri-food production systems contributes over 30% of global greenhouse gas emission. And we waste over 1.3 billion tons of food every year. While we waste a greater part of our time shopping for food we do not need and growing food that we end up wasting. These are some of the biggest food sustainability problems facing the planet today, but it's become easy just to say, what can I do? This is where the World Food Tracker comes in. Through the World Food Tracker, it has now become easier for you to plan to save. By planning your food diary on the World Food Tracker, you will discover locally produced food that nourishes your body and improves your health with zero impact on the environment. And here's how it works. You make your food diary using recipes from the World Food Tracker. And the World Food Tracker will use your recipe details to identify the food items you will use in the meal preparation, then provide you an insight on nutrient composition of the food and the shopping list. Through the Plan to Save campaign, we work with local food producers to ensure that food is produced sustainably. By sharing your weekly shopping list with local farmers, you are helping them prioritize sustainable food production, ensuring high-quality food produce and eliminating food waste. It all starts from your food diary. Join other users of the World Food Tracker around the world to plan your food and care for your health, your wealth and your environment. Together we can make good food more available to more people and evolve a world where no child goes to bed hungry. Did you know? 1 in 5 deaths every year is linked to malnutrition. Agri-food production systems contributes over 30% of global greenhouse gas emission. And we waste over 1.3 billion tons of food every year. While we waste a greater part of our time shopping for food we do not need and growing food that we end up wasting. These are some of the biggest food sustainability problems facing the planet today, but it's become easy just to say, what can I do? This is where the World Food Tracker comes in. Through the World Food Tracker, it has now become easier for you to plan to save. By planning your food diary on the World Food Tracker, you will discover locally produced food that nourishes your body and improves your health with zero impact on the environment. And here's how it works. You make your food diary using recipes from the World Food Tracker. And the World Food Tracker will use your recipe details to identify the food items you will use in the meal preparation, then provide you an insight on nutrient composition of the food and the shopping list. Through the Plan to Save campaign, we work with local food producers to ensure that food is produced sustainably. By sharing your weekly shopping list with local farmers, you are helping them prioritize sustainable food production, ensuring high-quality food produce and eliminating food waste. It all starts from your food diary. Join other users of the World Food Tracker around the world to plan your food and care for your health, your wealth and your environment. Together we can make good food more available to more people and evolve a world where no child goes to bed hungry. Did you know? 1 in 5 deaths every year is linked to malnutrition. Agri-food production systems contributes over 30% of global greenhouse gas emission. And we waste over 1.3 billion tons of food every year. While we waste a greater part of our time shopping for food we do not need and growing food that we end up wasting. These are some of the biggest food sustainability problems facing the planet today, but it's become easy just to say, what can I do? This is where the World Food Tracker comes in. Through the World Food Tracker, it has now become easier for you to plan to save. By planning your food diary on the World Food Tracker, you will discover locally produced food that nourishes your body and improves your health with zero impact on the environment. And here's how it works. You make your food diary using recipes from the World Food Tracker. And the World Food Tracker will use your recipe details to identify the food items you will use in the meal preparation, then provide you an insight on nutrient composition of the food and the shopping list. Through the Plan to Save campaign, We work with local food producers to ensure that food is produced sustainably. By sharing your weekly shopping list with local farmers, you are helping them prioritize sustainable food production, ensuring high-quality food produce and eliminating food waste. It all starts from your food diary. Join other users of the World Food Tracker around the world to plan your food and care for your health, your wealth, and your environment. Together we can make good food more available to more people and evolve a world where no child goes to bed hungry.
Hello, welcome back from the break, and we will be having our speakers join us at this point for the question and answers. Thank you, everyone that have put in their questions and their comments in the chat. We'll be addressing those questions as we move on with the discussion, and I'll be bringing the speakers on the stage at this moment. So, welcome back, Jean, Lisa, Rosa, and Louisa. It's been a great session. I have taken a lot of notes from your presentations, and hopefully the same applies to the audience. And just to kick off this question and answer session, I'll just come to you, Jean. What where do you see the key impacts being delivered across the food system from some of the work you are doing? Hello, Sean, can you hear me? Hello? Okay. I'll just try to repeat the question again in case if you didn't get that. You're still muted if you're speaking. Maybe that's a problem. Let me see. Hello, do you want to mute yourself, Jean? Sorry. Okay, while we try to sort that out, probably I will just go around the other speakers and ask some question. So Rosa, you talked a lot about the work you do with SMEs. So in terms of those engagements, where do you see the greatest impact from that engagement with SMEs? What activities do you think drive the greatest impact around reducing food loss and waste?
There are a number of factors. I think the biggest incentive for the SMEs to actually adopt the improved practices is because of the economic benefit that they would derive. That was one of the things that once we got that information and shared it with them, they see the value of actually investing and also improving on what they're doing, because once they do, once they improve the quality of what they do, they are able to diversify the market opportunities. And then also there's more income for them, and they can do a lot more with what they are producing. So it's all those factors. And then of course we do a lot of awareness and sensitization with them as well, to ensure that they understand that it's not only those factors, but there's also the other aspects related to the environment. And so that they, what they're doing currently makes sense and it's really useful in terms of the composting, animal feed, and those types of things. So it's like it's a system of developing and creating those values that support the benefits that they can realize. And these are some of the things that we we try to cultivate as we work with them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rosa, for sharing that. I think having that positive economic value and the businesses appreciating the value for them will be a great incentive for them to really invest time to explore these solutions that could help them reduce food loss and food waste. I know that, Lisa, you talked about a lot about the food systems and how the interconnections and how that drives changes across societal, economic, and environmental impact of food loss and waste. Is there any particular aspect of this wider structure that you see that really delivers huge change across the food system around food loss and food waste?
I think this is a question right now. Everybody is wondering about the effectiveness of the different types of incentives.
So, Lisa, do you want to get, I don't know what the problem is, but it's like the voice is not very clear. Do you want to get closer to your microphone?
Can you hear me better?
It's a lot better.
Yeah. What I was saying, yeah, there is no answer to all. Context is important. I'm guessing from a researcher perspective, in order to be able to measure effectiveness of the different types of incentive mechanisms and what type of behaviors they would target and what they would be most effective for, you would start with the data. We need data to be able to run those models and estimate. Without that, we can guess estimate and you can have qualitative discussions and people may suggest what they think may be more effective. But as an economist, I think data is important as a first step in getting somewhere. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Jean, I think you have you been able to resolve the mute button?
Oh, yes.
Fantastic,
Yes.
thank you. So I don't know if you want to respond to that question around the most important.
Tiffany?
No, not really on Tiffany. I just want to put that, just we'll start thinking about it because that's the next question.
Okay.
But I did ask a question around the area you feel drives most impact on food loss and food waste around the work you do.
Well, that's a difficult question. We need better measurement and to really see what is happening. We are increasingly trying to get data on everything we fund to see the impact of particular projects and across different programs. But in general, the best thing really to do is to prevent food loss and waste from happening in the first place and getting any excess wholesome food to those in need. So there are programs that we have that help do that, but that's really important. The worst thing is really having the food waste ending up in a landfill where it produces proportionally a greater amount of methane gas. And also if food is discarded in landfills, so do all the resources that were used to make that food are wasted as well, such as the arable land, fresh water, agricultural inputs, labor, and energy. So it's just really important to try and at first get it to feed hungry people first and keeping it out of landfills. But again, we need strategies all across the food supply chain.
Yeah, absolutely. I think data insight is quite important in every project we're doing. And that's why I really like the way that Lisa, you did mention the number of projects that did apply for this funding, the size of funding they were looking for, and that really establishes that, there's an important area in the food system that need to be funded because there's so much that can be done. So I was quite impressed with the size of projects that did apply for that funding, albeit that you can only address about 10% of that particular demand. So data is definitely important to drive change. So I think I'll come to you, Lisa, just with the same question to think about what area. I know you do a lot of work on food loss and some work on food waste. So what activity do you think drives a lot of change on food loss and food waste around your experience and the work you've done?
Well, I mean, certainly measurement tells the story of what's available. And so when we measure what's happening right now, we can find hotspots, understand, what's the most pressing that we can tackle. So I've spent a lot of my time on measurement. It's not, that flashy of an activity, but it is important to be able to tell the story. I think in food loss on farms in particular, when you look at it from the grower's perspective, the value of the crop growing in the field is pretty low. Most of the value is built in as that produce gets harvested.
Yep.
So the value of, say, a head of cabbage sitting in the field is pretty low. There again, when you disc in that produce or till in that produce to the soil, the environmental impact is not that huge either, according to the EPA. So I think that the area where we can make the most difference is really social impact. Unfortunately, growers are not now incentivized to provide food into our emergency food system, and that emergency food system is largely privately funded through charitable donations. So I think that system would have to change in order for growers to donate more or provide more to people who are in need. Clearly, they're great at producing, but what we need to be great at is helping them to bring those products to the people that need it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Lisa, for that.
So I want to add that we do have tax incentives in place, but frequently I've heard from growers that it's not enough to cover the cost of harvesting and transporting to the food bank, for example. So
yeah, I think that's very important, really getting the food to people so that we don't have to waste them in the first place. And this is why I always try to talk about planning and planning and planning across the food system. The more we can plan, the better we can get these produce to people. And if it means really rethinking the way we grow food today in a way that means that we can grow food closer to people that need it so that they can have better access to it, that is something that we also may need to think about going forward. But I think I just want to thank every one of us for your response to that question. I felt that question is very important to highlight the impact of some of the work you're already doing and hopefully give people an idea of what they can take away from this particular session. But I would like to bring in some of the audience question. I know Tiffany asked this question: what are the most important private sector partnerships each of the presenters are looking to establish? So, and I know that you're all doing amazing work in your own different establishments. So, if you do have a response to it, I think I'll make it open. If you do have any response to this, please feel free to come in.
I think I'd like to mention that we do want to lean into the ones that we've got going already. For example, the U.S. Food Loss and Waste 2030 Champions pledge that we have between the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Environmental Protection Agency. I mean, we are trying to increase the number of businesses that are committed to reducing food loss and waste in their own U.S. operations in half by 2030, because these businesses are leaders and, they can really show the path, show what's working, show their impact on their own websites. So we really, want to have more businesses become leaders and incentivize others. That's just one example. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. I don't know if another person has got an input to this question, to that question, sorry, from Tiffany on private sector partnerships, please.
Well, I'll say something briefly since Rosa and Louise aren't jumping in. I would love to hear from y'all, but I would say that, I have plenty of connections being a researcher and consultant. But I think that the connections that are needed are between growers and purchasers. We have, a real disconnect between what is produced and what is purchased. And I would say it's time to really move beyond the transactional relationship, develop a meaningful relationship, understanding that everyone needs to be successful in order to keep going. And I would hope that those partnerships could together come up with an alternate plan if, the produce is rejected or suddenly not needed or is on its way to a landfill. It's pretty straightforward to put a secondary plan in place and make sure you know where the produce will go if that happens. So I'm hopeful that growers and buyers can develop more meaningful relationships, but it's a difficult issue for both of those groups to discuss and to tackle. Food loss and food waste are often framed as someone blaming someone else for this happening. And I think what's more important is to look at who has the power or the leverage to change that. And I think that when we work together, we find out we all have that power. So I hope that more relationships can be developed between those two groups.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I'm sure that touches to one of the questions that Jane Morrows asks later, but we will come to that because we're just going through the questions as they came in. We've got this question from Jide asking, how can I calculate my carbon emission from my farm in Nigeria? I don't know if Louisa or Rosa, you've got any response to this.
Okay, the FAO is doing quite a lot of work now in terms of trying to support the countries with real-time information and helping them to actually upload a lot of the results in terms of the loss measurements, so in order to enable them to access information, but also to help to support them with the type of information that's requested here. Last year, FAO launched the food loss app, the FLAP, and that is one of the innovations that offers a lot of promise in terms of helping in that context, but also to support collective action, because the FLAP allows you to identify where in the world that loss is taking place. And then the farmers themselves are able to upload all of the information into the FLAP, and then it also automatically can provide them the information that they would require on specific issues, such as greenhouse gas emissions. But this is that data that is collected is micro level data. It's not what we're talking about when we're talking about the food loss index, although down the road it will contribute to supporting and to providing a lot of input and data that would influence the index. Thank you.
Nothing much to add to Rosa. It's very comprehensive. I'm guessing from a research perspective, looking into better harmonizing measurements, so implicitly data, but also methodologies. And we already know that there are a number of institutions and national or community levels. I'm talking FAO, I'm talking European Commission and national levels, of course, for the countries outside some of these organizations. You would end up with, again, different type of data, not well harmonized, different methodologies to get there. Harmonizing all these would progress things everywhere, so to help research. That's, I'm guessing, question from Mazrul. Thanks for the question. Apologies for mispronunciation, if.
That's fine. Thank you so much, Lisa. I think that question is very much relevant to you, and I'm glad that you have taken it on. So, I think we'll go to the next question. That comes to you, Lisa. Someone really appreciated your presentation and was asking, can you speak to how CPG manufacturers who utilize fresh fruit or produce in their products can establish relationships with growers to identify upcycling opportunity? That's from Jen Morals.
Sure, I can try. We have really talented growers all across the US, so I would suggest that, they're pretty easy to find. However, they might not be open to new opportunities right away. If you go to your state Department of Agriculture websites, they often have listings of farms in your state that are producing what you're looking for, and you could contact those growers. I would suggest that to the degree you can purchase produce in bulk and unwashed, that would be a great deal of help to growers because they have to do a lot less work to get it out the door. So if you think of things from their perspective, if they don't need to sort or pack that product, that saves them a lot of money. I would also say that, if you're approaching a grower that you've never talked to before with an interest to buy some of their products, the way you talk to growers is kind of important. I wouldn't say, for example, we're a new startup that's creating jam on the go, for lunch boxes or something like that. What I would say is I'm a new processor in the area and I'm interested in purchasing from you. What kind of quality do you have? What can you offer? Can I ask for a field run, which is just when the produce is unsorted, and find out what other processors are paying and pay them more. Then they might be happy to work with you. Good question.
Yeah, well, thank you, Lisa, for addressing that particular question. Just to say that I just want to highlight that IntelliDigest is very pleased to have all the speakers with us today, and I just hope that all the audience that we had today will be able to benefit from the presentations, and we will be sharing the slides across the different platforms, which means that it will also continue to drive impact as people come across the presentation and engage with it. But while we are here, I'll try to take on the next question we have from Tiffany. He's asking, what program do you consider, excuse me, the most successful as a model that can be applied or adjusted for rapid adaptation on a local level and or at scale, and which is better for the greatest impact? I think, Jean, you can come in here and see if you got some points.
Yeah. Some of the programs that I think, Lisa's SARE program is really important. I think we saw so many people with really interesting applications. And I do want to mention as a quick aside that I'm seeing real momentum in this space, real, recognition that this is a growing problem that we really do need to be addressed, and a lot of grassroots efforts and so many people who want to be part of the solution. So I want to say that. But there are a lot of successful models, such as, hubs that collect compost from restaurants and households and so forth, and compost for the community and get some of the good soil back to farms as well. There's just a wide range of models that are really great, and we just need to keep investing, keep adding our efforts, investing our time and energy into these activities, and really help move the needle. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sean. And I hope, Tiffany, you found that useful. So I think just coming back again to the issue of food loss and food waste in general, it'd be great to know your thoughts around the key policies that you think has been enacted or something that's still in the pipeline that could really help to address some of the food loss and food waste challenges that we have today. Probably, Rosa, can you come in with some thoughts on that?
In terms of the food loss policies, we still don't have very much. Still, it's something that I think as more data, we have more access to more data, we'll have more information to better inform policy development. What is happening now with the FLAP, for example, we can actually begin to collect more information that can better inform some of the sectoral policy. But when it comes to looking at what is happening in the context of the index, that's where we need data to really help to do much more in terms of what needs to be done at a higher level in terms of looking at the actions and the informing a lot more in terms of the incentives at a higher level. So I think we need to work on that data collection. It's so vitally important for so many different dimensions of what we're doing when we're talking about food losses. And also, food losses they're a complex issue. If you work in one country, in one agroecology, systems work one way. You move to a different part and it's a different issue. So no one size fits all. And this is one of the major issues that we always have to contend with as we, start looking across different systems and countries and regions as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rosa. Data insight is critical for making decisions and driving policy. I think it just helps decision makers to see where they really need to put effort in. Jean, do you have any contribution to this in terms of policy? Where do you see things?
Yeah, I do want to mention that in the United States, we have the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Donation Act, and which provides product liability protection for those who donate in good faith. And it's a little bit more complicated than that, but more needs to be done to spread the word about these liability protections, because it hasn't ever really been tested in court, and some people don't feel that it might be there in case they actually got sued. So need to spread the word about that. And then there are also state level protections, for food product liability protections for food donation as well. The federal one is a bar, essentially.
Yeah,
There is a global. I'm drawing a global food donation atlas that might be helpful. I think it has maybe a couple dozen countries now in the atlas, and it highlights what policies are in place at different levels. So that might be of interest to the audience.
yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Jean, for sharing that. Lisa, I know policy is not an area probably Lisa might be doing a bit of work on policy. Do you have some comments on that?
Lisa, would you like to go first?
Well, I can say that I'm not an expert. The study of food loss and waste has grown a lot over time, and we've understood a lot more things to be true over time. In the US, anyway, many of our policies were developed a long time ago and have focus in other areas. So I would encourage us to think about how those policies are affecting growers at this point in time. How are they contributing to food loss and waste, for example? We have, in the US, we have a lot of fruit and vegetable crops which are hand harvested, and that labor is not subsidized. So growers really feel the pinch when they are trying to pay for labor. There again, we have crop insurance that is not really strongly supporting our fruit and vegetable growers. So, I don't think that we've made huge mistakes. I just think that it's probably time for these policies to be revisited in light of what we know in food loss and waste, and find out how our policies sometimes force growers to make decisions or let go of viable crops when they could be moving those on either to the marketplace or to people.
If I'm to add to the previous opinions, and I'm fully agree with all of them, I would say from workshops, reviews, modeling, and a number of other things, you tend to think that the combination of measures may be sometimes more effective than the individual measures separately. And an example is after a number of separate measures, as everywhere, I guess, in Scotland, for instance, policies moving along a more systemic ways to deal with it. So, for instance, the latest circular economy strategy and the circular economy bill would actually include a number of measures, not, carrot and stick together. If I'm to comment on which is more effective, I again would favor combination of measures. I'm not sure about redistribution. I tend to see the pros and cons of that, and how many would see that donation may perpetuate the idea that poverty needs to be, dealt with this way, and may postpone more efficient measures to deal with poverty. Same about waste. You know there is an outlet for it, donating, redistributing. You may be less keen or less interested to devote resources to preventing waste in the first place. So there are a number of aspects. Obviously, redistribution is better than recycling or worse disposal, but I'm guessing measures that would lead to prevention should be prioritized everywhere. And in terms of, there's a question earlier on screen, I can't quite remember, but there was something about what are the most effective, the ones that would lead to rapid adaptation and more significant change. So there was a little bit of a contradiction in terms they are not another question. It's just that the answer can maybe reflect that. So rapidly, a change would be mostly what? Infrastructure. But in terms of significant change, we're talking behaviors, and that takes time. So significant and rapid may not always work well together unless we're very lucky. So, yeah.
Fantastic contributions. I think we're coming to the time for this webinar, and I just want to say thank you so much for all the input you've made. I will just say one last thing you want to leave with our audience today. If you want to kick off, John. Jean, do you want to go first?
I just wanted to say, really, again, emphasize that everyone has a role to play. This is a huge challenge. It's very solvable. And we just need to move towards the goal of reducing food loss and waste.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jean. Rosa, just one last comment for our audience.
Yes, I think that when we started in 2015 to now, we've made quite a lot of progress in terms of understanding a lot more than we knew then. So where we are today can, particularly with the innovation and the developments, I think we're ready to begin to move very quickly, and that's what we're looking forward to. Scaling up some of the good practice and trying to, generate the impact. We may not make it for 2030, but we still have to look beyond. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think with more partnerships, we can do a lot and see what we can do. Lisa, do you want to go next?
Sure. Just a final word. We had a question about what research would be most impactful, and we had a question about what models would be, rapidly adopted. There's no one solution to food loss and food waste. So pick up the part of it that holds your interest, find out what the drivers are, and then you'll have to take action on that. So for example, if you're in a rural situation and you have problems accessing electricity or cooling technology, that's where you need to start. Those technologies would be rapidly adopted. If you're in the US, we might need to start testing market interventions because that's where we are. So, do what you can. Everybody can do something. I would say lean on the data that you have and find out the drivers first.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Lisa. Point on. Lisa?
Apologies, Lisa. I'll have to reiterate word by word what you said. That's what I'm thinking. At the same time, is basically everybody attending this webinar, is involved in a way or another in preventing and reducing food waste and, finding a way towards circularity. So whatever you're already doing, just keep doing that. Thanks, Lisa. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, amazing ladies, for your contribution. Just to say one last thing around diversity and inclusion, it was never intentional to have an all-female panel. Where I just did reach out to a lot of experts in the sector. At the end of the day, we had these amazing ladies speaking to us today, and this is my first time. Over the years, we've been holding webinars, quarterly webinars around critical topics in the food system, but this is the first time I'm able to host an all-female webinar session. I'm so proud of it, and I do hope you enjoyed the session. And just to say, it wasn't intentional. It happened that way, and I hope it was very useful to you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. Bye. Bye. So, as we try to wrap up the session today, one last thing task for us to do. If you are just joining us, I'm just going to add this to the stage. This is the Mentimeter we're using, so please do connect with it. If you look at the charts, you will see the link to, I'll also try to share the link again, and then the unique code so you can connect with it. But please do engage with us for this last question before you finally sign off. And if you didn't manage to do that, or maybe you're rushing off to somewhere at the moment, you can always access the link and do it later. Do check out the Mentimeter link, and please do engage with this last question. We really want to know what action you'll be taking next from this particular session, and we will be wrapping this up, this session up here. We will also be taking the reports from the Mentimeter and the wider engagement we'll have during the session and share that as a full-on report for anyone who has signed up for the webinar or attended the webinar. Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for joining the session today. I hope you found it as very useful as I did find the session. Do carry on engaging with us on the Mentimeter, and we will definitely be following up with all the people that registered for the webinar, and also those that attended, to share the outcome of this engagement with you. I hope the session was very useful to you, and we will all continue to work together. We will all continue to explore partnership opportunities to make sure that we can address the challenges we have across the food system, including the food loss and food waste. Thank you for joining us today, and have a lovely day. Bye.
Mhm.